Good morning, students. New chapter of history, the French Revolution. So, here we go. On the morning of 14th July 1789, the city of Paris was in the state of alarm. The king had commanded troops to move into the city. Rumors spread that he would soon order the army to open fire upon the citizens. Some 7,000 men and women gathered in front of town hall and decided to form a people's militia. They broke into a number of government buildings in search of arms. फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ में ट्रूप्स का मतलब होता है सेना, ह्यूमरस का मतलब होता है अफवाह और मिलिटिया का मतलब होता है मिलिट्री. सेकेंड पैरा. Finally, a group of several hundred peoples marched towards the eastern part of the city and stormed the fortress prison. Fortress prison का मतलब होता है जेल. The Bastille, where they hoped to find hoarded ammunition. In the armed fight that followed, the commander of the Bastille was killed and prisoners released through. There were only 7 of them. Yet the Bastille was hated by all because it stood for a despotic power of the king. The fortress was demolished and its stone fragments were sold in the market to all those who wished to keep souvenir to its destruction. Third paragraph. The day that followed saw more rioting both in Paris and the countryside. Most people were protesting against the high price of bread. Much later, when historians looked back upon this time, they saw it as the beginning of the chain of events that ultimately lead to the execution of the king in France. Though most people at the time did not anticipate this outcome. How and why this happened? First point, the French society during the late 18th century. In 1774, Louis XVI of the Bourbon family of king ascended the throne of France. He was 20 years old and married to the Austrian Princess Marie Antoinette. Upon his accession, the king found an empty treasury. Long years of war had drained the financial resources of France. Added to this was the cost of maintaining an extravagant court at the immense palace of Versailles. Under Louis XVI, France helped the 13th American colonies to gain their independence from the common enemy, Britain. The war added from more than a billion livres to a debate that had already risen to more than 2 billion livres. Lenders who gave the state credit now began to charge 10% interest on loans. So, French government was obliged to spend an increasing percentage of its budget on interest payments alone. To meet its regular expenses such as the cost of maintaining an army, the court, running government offices or universities, the state was forced to increase taxes. Yet, even this measure would not have sufficed. French society in the 18th century was divided into three states, and only members of the third estate paid taxes. The Society of Estates was part of the feudal system that dated back to the Middle Ages. The term old regime is usually used to describe the society and institutions of France before 1789. Figure 2 shows how the system of estates in French society was organized. Peasants made up about 90% of the population. However, only a small number of them owned the land they cultivated. But about 60% of the land was owned by nobles, the church, and other richer members of the third estate. The members of the first two states, this is the clergy and the nobility, enjoyed certain privileges by the birth. The most important of these was exemption from paying taxes to state. The noble further enjoyed feudal privileges. These included feudal dues, which they extracted from the peasants. Peasants were obliged to render services to the lord, to work in his house and fields, to serve the army, or to participate in the building roads.